Have a good weekend, man.
I'll see ya.
Shall we? Let's get it started. And welcome into Rob Schmitt Tonight. I'm Bob Brooks. Rob, he's got the night off. Good for him. What a sight at the White House today. The President of the United States sitting next to a man he believes to be a communist, who calls himself a socialist and is the next mayor of the economic capital of the world, Zoran Mamdani. Whoever thought this would happen? You think George Washington did? You see a statue right next to Mamdani there. I doubt it. There was a statue of our president on the left, on the right, our current president in the middle, a communist. Historic. That was a historic moment at the White House today. It truly was. It will go down in history. Now, with that being said, my big takeaway amongst a few was this is about don't jump. Don't abandon ship. Businesses, don't leave yet. People with the means to move, maybe just don't do it just yet. Though there are already reports that it's happening. A Miami real estate developer has already made that claim, saying this. In the past few months alone, his company signed more than 100 million contracts with $100 million in contracts with New York buyers. Kind of crazy. And the president, he is aware of this. So I believe today was largely about sending a message to millions of Americans who call New York City home, that depend on New York for their livelihoods, that are now worried about the future of their city, that the president of the United States isn't going to let it all go to hell. He doesn't want Americans suffering. He doesn't want to see the Big Apple fail. So I think that's why he tried to hammer this point home today.
We had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great.
Now, with that being said, despite how cordial seemed things were between the two, are we really supposed to believe that Zoran Mamdani is going to come back here to New York and say, hey, guess what? We're really going to work hand in hand now with the Trump administration. Now, I know the president did his best to assure the people that that will happen, but just based on Mamdani's campaign, I would have to guess no, that's not going to happen. I hope it does, but his whole movement was based on anti-Trump. He said repeatedly he wanted to Trump-proof the city so administration wouldn't have to depend on federal funding, which, according to the state comptroller, New York City's proposed fiscal year 2026 operating budget relies on $7.4 billion in federal government funding, accounting for 6.4% of total spending. Well, Mamdani said he has a plan, so he doesn't need any of that federal dollars. Here, take a look.
I've proposed is that we raise $10 billion to pay for our entire economic agenda and start to Trump-proof our city, because we know he'll use federal funding as leverage over this city. And we will do so in two key ways. The first is to match the state's top corporate tax rate to that of New Jersey. And the second is taxing the top 1% of New Yorkers.
There's his plan. What also leaves me highly skeptical is during his victory speech a couple weeks ago, he insulted the president, and then he said he's going to tear down the systems that allow someone like President Trump to go on and have success. We know he campaigned on government-run grocery stores, free buses, freezing rents, but it was really, I think, this soundbite that really lets you know what this guy is all about.
If there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power.
And there we go. Tear it all down. And how did we arrive here? Well, that seems pretty obvious to me. I talk about it all the time during my show on the day. It's a problem all over the country. It's just exasperated here in New York because of how expensive the city has become. Young people can't afford a home, and that's who voted for him. And they can't save up enough for a home because rents are too high. People are stuck in what I like to call rent hell. That's why the average age of a first-time home buyer is now 40 years old in America. Think about that. And Mamdani admitted today in the Oval Office that he seized on this crisis for young people, and that's what put him into office.
We sought especially to increase turnout amongst New Yorkers who hadn't been participating and to register new voters. And we said that we would do this by espousing a politics of no translation, by speaking directly to the crisis that working people were facing in this city, which is ultimately a crisis of affordability.
Now, it was also something President Trump recognized today in the Oval Office, talking about the need to build more homes because the U.S., if you don't know this, currently faces a major housing shortage between 3.8 and 8.2 million homes. It is a giant mess. And here was the president earlier today.
He said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
That's also why the president has called for building more homes everywhere. Back in October, this headline came out: Trump calls on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to get big home builders going. You see, whichever party politically comes up with a way to build houses, to make rent more affordable, to make it easier for young people to achieve the American dream is going to win in the future. That's a fact. Look at Mamdani. That's proof. But if we talk about affordability, got to remind you of this. The country didn't become astronomically expensive for everyone until Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the new Socialist Democrat Party ushered in an unprecedented era of inflation. That is their legacy. 25% cumulative inflation in their 4 years in office, when it should only have been 8%. If you go by the standard of 2% per year that the Fed targets, it was a disaster. And I got to repeat this. It was a disaster. Inflation under the Democrats' watch was a complete and total disaster. Rampant inflation like that will mess the country up big time. And now it has. And that's why everyone is talking about affordability. President Trump talked about inflation constantly while on the campaign trail and also in his debate against Kamala Harris.
Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history.
And now nearly a quarter of all households are estimated to live paycheck to paycheck in our country. Credit card debt, it is at all-time highs. You can look that up. Under Joe Biden, rents rose 21.6%, and according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, from 2020 to 25, the average price of a home rose in our country 38.22%. And I got to ask all of you, who out there, in order to keep up with rents going up 21% and home prices going up 38%, got that kind of a pay raise at work? I doubt many. But what the whole inflation disaster led us to now is this: a socialist, or as President Trump says, a communist, made his way into the Oval Office today because Mamdani seized on the crisis of affordability. That's the new mayor of New York. It's really a historic day, and he thinks more government is actually the answer.
We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
Thank you, Democrats. You got us here. And I will say, though, I am glad we have President Trump in office right now, because could you imagine if it were Kamala Harris? What do you think Mamdani would do with New York City then? Okay, joining us now, someone who knows about being mayor of New York City, the former mayor, America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani. He joins us tonight on Friday night. Mayor, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Very nice to see you.
We'll talk about it. The meeting today with Mamdani in the Oval Office, I think, kind of different than maybe we all expected. Yeah, chummier, they had some nice moments. Little unexpected. What'd you make of it?
It was unexpected. I'll say I expected it to be cordial. They always are with the president. I mean, the president conducts himself that way unless someone gets stupid, which people should realize. This is the way the man acts all his life. I don't know. I have, I guess, stronger feelings. It is the position that I held and gave 8 years of my life to. And to see it go to a child, irresponsible, ne'er-do-well communist,
right,
is frightening. Even more frightening is his embrace of extremist fundamentalist Islam, which is a very, very strong embrace. I mean, the people that he has been associating with are people way back I had under investigation. One of them was an unindicted co-conspirator for the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. These are things I lived through. I was in New York then. I was running for mayor when that happened. It could be one of the reasons I was elected mayor, because Dinkins was in Japan when that happened, didn't seem to know what the hell to do about it. And I promised to put together an effort against terrorism that became the prototype, really, for the terrorism task force all around the country.
Yeah, Mayor, I think that so many young people voted for Mamdani that they don't even know about that. They weren't even born yet, and they've been drawn to his movement here. And I think part of the reason why maybe, and this is just my observation, the reason why President Trump had him in the Oval Office today was to maybe try and calm some of those fears that business owners might have, that people might have here in New York, to say, hey, look, I am the President of the United States here. I want to see New York City, his hometown, all cities really do well, despite the fact of who holds the office of mayor now. Do you think that was part of it?
Oh, it certainly was, and I think, look, I can have my views on the percentage that this is going to work out. Do I think it was a smart way to start? Sure, it was a smart way to start, and now any deterioration in the relationship will be by the communist and Islamic extremist sympathizer, not by the president. Of course, I want to see New York City do well. I want to see myself wrong about him. I'd like to see him change. I mean, my goodness, St. Augustine converted. He could convert, right?
Right.
But all of that doesn't belie the fact that it makes me sick to my stomach to see that man in the Oval Office.
Now, Mayor, so much of Mamdani's campaign was, dismantling. He even said on his, I played this clip tonight, his victory speech, that he wanted to dismantle parts of the system that allowed people like Donald Trump to have and build success here in New York City. So as mayor, what kind of levers could he realistically pull to implement his agenda, which is extreme? And he talked about changing New York City in his vision.
I'll give you a very, very rough analysis of it. Assuming he's really good politically, not meaning running around and campaigning, but I mean at the intricacies of politics, the way President Trump is, by the way. He could implement about half of it. He can't implement all of it. Only unless Hochul is willing to give up the governorship and go in whole hog with him. If she does, she'll get ruined in upstate New York. The people in upstate New York are not, people who can be jerked around with. They're very serious people. And the vote against Mamdani is going to be tremendous because she supported him. So she's in a real bind. Does she support him? In which case she gets his rather considerable communist, socialist, crazy Democrat base. If she does, she loses upstate New York by a record, and Nassau County was his biggest enemy. That's the county right next to it.
Right.
So you lose the suburban counties big, you lose upstate New York big. That's how George Pataki became governor. That's how Nelson Rockefeller for years became governor. That's how Republicans get elected in the state.
Right, right. Okay, well, obviously, we'll keep an eye on it. The era is here, though. The mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, Mayor, I thought it was interesting to have a socialist, or as President Trump says, a communist in the Oval Office, and then you saw the statue of George Washington on his left, on his flank there, and wow, it was a historic day. Mayor Giuliani, thanks for coming on.
Might not be a bad idea to get a Catholic priest to come in and bless the place now.
Might not be. We'll work on that. All right, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, Democrats demand we all remember transgender people. Okay, we're talking Trans Remembrance Day. That was a thing. Happened yesterday all over the country for those who participated. Details next.
Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
Before Charlie Kirk died, he issued a stark warning of terrifying dangers ahead in a new book, Pagan Threat, authored by Pastor Lucas Miles. Charlie said Pagan Threat could save America and that you must read it. Get Pagan Threat free with Newsmax's special offer. Plus, get Dick Morse's new book, The Real Charlie Kirk. 2 great books with our free offer today.
I'm Elmer Heinrich. At 91 years of age, here with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order now. You'll be glad you did.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. So Nobella changed that in one visit.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit, total body transformation everyone is talking about.
I am super happy with my results.
I decided to give Sonobello a try. Look at me, I have a silhouette. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is Sonobello's breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative. Our body contouring experts sculpt, tighten, and lift your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside, all in just one visit with less downtime.
Sonobello targeted the areas diet and exercise could not do. I found me again.
Sonobello has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and Lift EX is exclusively available at Sonobello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist. Book your free, personalized consultation today. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever.
This year is my year thanks to Sonobello.
Call Sonobello for your free consultation today.
Thank you for joining us today for this Transgender Day of Remembrance, put on by Inclusive, the employee resource group for the state of Minnesota's Two-Spirit LGBTQIA+ employees. We are here to find the courage and hope, but we are as much here to mourn that the violence of transphobia most affects my trans siblings who are Black, brown, Indigenous, people of color.
All right. You heard that correctly. In Minnesota, all across America yesterday, vigils, they were held for Trans Day of Remembrance, not to be confused with Trans Day of Visibility, because there are, in fact, 2 trans holidays, not to mention the entire Pride Month in June. Trans Day of Remembrance is defined by the Democrats' official X account as a day to mourn the transgender Americans whose lives were lost to anti-transgender violence. The new face of the Democrat Party, Zohran Mamdani, is making a lot of headlines today. He echoed that sentiment. On this Trans Day of Remembrance, we remember the bright and courageous trans people whose lives were stolen by hatred. Their absence is felt across the city. We will honor them by building a New York where every trans person can live safely, fully, and freely. In the 2028 Democrat hopeful Gavin Newsom, California governor, he couldn't miss his chance to pander either. He wrote this: on Transgender Day of Remembrance, California mourns and honors all the trans and gender non-conforming people taken from us by violence and discrimination. The historic first transgender member of Congress, Democrat Sarah McBride, who's really a man, writing on Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember those tragically lost to violence against the trans community. Look, if anyone was ever hurt for being trans, that is wrong, but that's extremely rare. And last I checked, trans people didn't storm the beaches of Normandy, right? So why do we need a holiday to remember them? I think it's just more woke stuff making our way into society. Let's ask Jaimee Michell, founder of Gays Against Groomers, joining us tonight. Jaimee, why do we need this day of remembrance? What's the real point, do you think, for something like this?
Well, thanks for having me tonight. I think it's just more propaganda. It's very obvious. You know, they try and make this all about victims of hate crimes, where I actually looked up the data right before this show. In the United States, every year, there are about 30 trans-identified people that are murdered out of hate, and discrimination. Compare that to the suicides that by people who identify as trans, and that is in the hundreds just per year in the United States. So I think that, Trans Day of Remembrance is all good and well, but I think we need to redirect it to people who were victims of trans ideology, who transitioned and then killed themselves. Or let's talk about the people who were senselessly murdered by radical trans extremists, who are more and more often mass shooters.
Okay, well, Jaimee, let me jump in here. We'll talk about that pattern that you're discussing right now. Details have emerged about Thomas Matthew Crooks. He was the Trump shooter in Butler. The New York Post reported this. Crooks used they, them pronouns. He was also into furry culture. We also have other young, isolated men deep into internet perversions, furry culture in particular. 20-year-old Crooks, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, he was Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin. He was playing a furry shades of gay porn game online. All right, 23-year-old Robin Westman, he was the trans shooter in Minnesota who killed 2 children at the Annunciation Catholic School back in August. He had a furry girlfriend. 20-year-old Wes Raleigh shot and killed 2 firefighters in Idaho, perched in a tree after intentionally starting a mountain fire to draw them in. He was into furry culture online as well. It seems like there's an issue with mental illness and, like you said, indoctrination, and it messes these people up.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you just listed off 4. You would need the rest of the program to get through the entire list just in the past few years. It seems like every time there is a mass shooting now, we just wait for the news to drop that, yes, they were into trans ideology or they were transitioning themselves. There is a serious issue with violence, and I don't believe that the main focus should be trans people who were murdered in hate crimes. And yes, every death is a tragedy, but we need to focus on the actual victims that this ideology is targeting and takes the lives of every day. More and more. And what about the innocent children who fall victim to this ideology, who lose their innocence forever when they snap out of this phase? They're missing body parts or they're chemically castrated. What about them? Their lives are destroyed by transgender ideology. We need to broaden the scope of this day, I think, if we're going to continue to celebrate it.
Couldn't agree more. And it can rip families apart, whether it's through, these shooters here or just families in general when one of their children come to them and say, hey, I want to transition into this. It's really nasty stuff here. And I think those things that you just mentioned is what we should be talking about. Jaimee Michell, we appreciate you coming on. Good to see you tonight.
Thank you, you too.
Coming up, Trump comes up with a 28-point plan to end the Russia-Ukraine war once and for all. But Zelensky says he must choose between Ukraine losing dignity or losing the United States as a partner. Okay, we're going to dive into the details coming up next. Stick with us.
A new president is sworn in. America's greatness is restored. Millions of Americans are tuning in to Newsmax. Even President Trump says Newsmax is terrific. Watch Newsmax or download our free app on your TV or phone today.
Invest in Ukraine now. Ukraine is rebuilding, innovating, and shaping the future. Because Ukraine is the potential. Kyivstar is Ukraine's leading digital operator. Invests in Ukraine's connectivity, entertainment, ride-hailing, healthcare, and innovation. It's time to think opportunity. It's time to think Ukraine now.
Your bathtub is a problem. It's outdated and unsafe. The solution, a stunning new shower from Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, installed in as little as 1 day.
For the first time ever, we're offering free fixtures and a free shower door with no interest and no payments for up to a year.
Jacuzzi offers so many modern styles with luxurious features like soft closed doors. Jacuzzi delivers style and safety. Upgrade to an easy entry shower with a custom seat and durable grab shelves. Jacuzzi has been a trusted name for over 70 years, and that means quality.
It is beautiful.
You deserve a bathroom that's beautiful and safe. So don't wait. Call right now.
Call or go online now to jacuzzibathremodel.com. For a limited time, get free fixtures and a free shower door, plus 0 interest and 0 payments for up to 1 year.
Call 800-202-8011. That's 800-202-8011. Call now.
These days, supporting the right causes matters more than ever. That's why I chose Patriot Mobile. They're not just a great mobile service provider, they're all about giving back. Every bill helps support causes we believe in: family, faith, and freedom. You get great nationwide coverage on all 3 main networks. Even better, you're doing it with an American company that stands up for us. It's time to make the switch, y'all. Let's support a wireless company that's got our back. Go to patriotmobile.com and make the switch today.
A peace plan for Gaza. For the plan to advance, Hamas must disarm. Instead,
tonight, terrifying images emerging from Gaza. Videos show Hamas-linked gunmen carrying out a public execution as they return to the streets.
Hamas on a rampage, executing Palestinians, bloody crackdown, spreading terror. For freedom, not terror, Hamas must go.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the barn, treats were all wrapped up, heading out from the farm. Harry and David exclaimed as they drove out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all," and to all, a good bite.
Meet Andrew from the Zebra. Andrew lives and breathes insurance. Andrew stays up all night watching the Zebra find people's savings. You might think nobody could love insurance as much as Andrew, but at the Zebra, everybody's really into savings. The Zebra monitors your insurance and informs you of savings the moment we find it. So you never have to second-guess your policy or your price. Nobody does insurance like the Zebra. Find out how much you can save today.
This is one of the most difficult moments in our history. Ukraine may now face a very difficult choice, either losing its dignity or the risk of losing a key partner.
He'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess. Well, at some point, he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards.
Well, that was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reacting to President Trump's new 28-point peace plan proposal to end the war with Russia, saying this pivotal moment is the most difficult in Ukraine's history, calling it a choice between Ukraine losing its dignity or losing the United States as a partner. Now, Trump reiterated from the Oval Office Zelensky doesn't have the cards and should take the deal that he has come up with. Zelensky hopped on an hour phone call with our Vice President J.D. Vance earlier, writing this afterwards. We managed to cover a lot of the details of the American side's proposal for ending the war. Ukraine has always respected and continues to respect U.S. President Donald Trump's desire to put an end to the bloodshed, and we view every realistic proposal positively. It's been almost 4 years since Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and over 1 million casualties later, plus hundreds of millions of our tax dollars have been spent. We finally have a president who wants to make it stop. Now, the 28-point plan includes this: territorial concessions, the confirmation of Ukraine's sovereignty, the guarantee that NATO will not expand further, and Ukraine enshrine its constitution that they won't join NATO. Russia is invited to rejoin the G8. Ukraine must hold elections in 100 days and limit the size of their military, while the U.S. enters a long-term economic agreement with Ukraine while receiving compensation for security guarantees. Now, these guarantees that would mirror NATO-level protection. The plan states that a future significant, deliberate, and sustained armed attack by Russia would be viewed as threatening the peace and security of the transatlantic community. Let's talk about it now. Here with analysis, Rebecca Grant, National Security Analyst and Senior Fellow at the Lexington Institute. We also have Brent Sadler, former Pentagon official and Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Pleasure to have you both. Rebecca, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to get to this. Putin, he's come out and said the 28-point plan can serve as a foundation for a final settlement of the conflict. But then also I want to get your reaction to what Zelensky said, saying that Ukraine's going to have to lose its dignity or partnership with the United States. Go ahead.
Well, first off, I like this as a business deal. It's classic Trump. It's focused on prosperity for Ukraine. And a lot of the economic pieces, EU membership, et cetera, are a pretty decent deal for Ukraine. The big question, though, is Putin going to finally agree to this? The record so far, he hasn't agreed to anything. Putin has to stop shooting those missiles and drones before anything can go forward.
Brent, want to get to this. Reuters, his sources telling them this evening Ukraine is going to work on a counter proposal to the 28-point plan with Britain, France, and Germany. Okay, now UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he spoke to Zelensky over the phone earlier. He had this reaction to Trump's plan.
Well, I've just had a call with President Zelensky alongside President Macron and Chancellor Merz. All matters to do with Ukraine must be determined ultimately by Ukraine.
Meanwhile, CNN, they went on to write this: Trump is giving Russia almost everything it wants with his Ukraine peace plan. Brent, your reaction to all of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with CNN's characterization. There are things to be cautionary in there, and certainly what we're being shown or being able to see that's leaked out to the press is probably not where the negotiations are right now tonight, and certainly not since these phone calls, which may not have been the best course of action by Zelensky to take. But clearly the Ukrainians cannot afford a repeat of the, offers of support in 1994 that evaporated because they were not real solid security guarantees. I think that's really what they should focus in on. We should focus less on the details because we're not going to know them until all the sides agree to it and they make it public. But the end of this needs to be a lasting and an endurable peace. And it needs to happen soon because the United States' national interest here is that we need to focus elsewhere in the world where the threats directly to us are starting to grow, most notably from China.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think just from the American people spending all this money and this time here, kind of taken away from a lot of issues, Brent, to your point, but also here domestically at home. Also want to talk about this, though, Rebecca. Sources are telling Axios the U.S. has threatened to cut intelligence and weapons sharing with Ukraine in order to press them into accepting that peace deal, adding that Kyiv was under greater pressure from Washington than during any previous peace discussions, and that the U.S. wanted Ukraine to sign a framework of the deal by next Thursday morning. Okay, We're talking Thanksgiving. What do you think happens?
Well, Trump will keep the pressure on, but I'm encouraged that Army Secretary Driscoll was just in Kyiv, because Ukraine will end up with an army that has good air defenses, plenty of tanks, space and cyber power, so that they can defend whatever the border is against a resurgent Russia. And we need to make sure the rest of Europe is defended against a resurgent Russia, too. So I think the pressure will be on both sides. Clearly, a lot of thought has gone into this deal as the specifics emerge, and it's clear that Trump wants to make a deal and end this war.
Yeah, he certainly does. Wants to stop the bloodshed, too. Brent, lastly here, the money, as we're talking about. We've a senior official told the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine significantly changed one of the 28 points in the version that appeared online in an apparent move to expose alleged corruption, right? The draft had called for an audit of all international aid that Ukraine had received, adding the language was changed to say all parties will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war. Your thought on an audit on international aid and where that might lead?
Well, I think the U.S. government should do that anyway. I'm sure there's certainly fraud that's there. And I think we should do that as a matter of fact. I think it's important also to note that the devil's in the details about where the actual line of control is. And giving up territory too quickly or hard points that are fortified could make a resumption of hostilities more likely rather than less in the future. So wherever that line of battle is frozen, it needs to be in such a place that if either the Russians or the Ukrainians resume hostilities, the risk and the danger is too great. And the other part of that is no one is addressing the Black Sea and the Russian Black Sea fleet. There's a lot of money on the seafloor there, and that could be another hot spot if it's not addressed going forward.
All right, got to leave it there. Rebecca, Brent, appreciate you coming on, sticking around on Friday night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Democrats in the viral video calling for a coup. They're doubling down on that. This is pretty wild stuff. Okay, details next.
I'm Michael Savage, and I was conservative before conservative was cool. Do you realize how crazy the liberals in this country have become? I do. You want to get me started today? I'll get started. Watch Michael Savage and the Savage Nation every Sunday night.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
Have you compared your Medicare plan recently? With eHealth, you can compare Medicare plans side by side for free. So we invited people to give eHealth a try and discover how easy it can be to find your Medicare match.
This is pretty amazing. I can go on a vacation with this money. I have quite a few prescriptions.
That's why people call us. We're going to compare plans, and I'm going to try to get you as much bang for your buck as possible.
That's great.
This one here covers all your prescriptions, your doctors as well.
Oh, wonderful.
I have a hard time with this.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for. Based on our conversation today, I would highly recommend this plan.
You're so helpful. You don't know.
I'm excited for you, sir. Again, my name is Cham. If you have any other questions, give me a ring.
Thank you very much. Oh my God, that was super easy.
See how your Medicare plan stacks up with the big changes for 2026. Just call this number or get started at ehealth.com. Compare plans that cover your doctors, prescriptions, pharmacy, and budget. And compare plans from the nation's top insurance companies. They pay us to help you. How much do you think you'll be able to save using eHealth?
At least $300 a month.
Would you say you found your Medicare match?
Yes, I did. What Sham did, she explained to me exactly what I needed to know.
Well, I have a surprise for you. Cham, come on out.
Oh my goodness.
It's a pleasure to meet you today, sir. What does it feel like to be face to face?
You helped me out quite a bit.
Call to meet your advisor. They're paid the same no matter which Medicare Advantage plan you choose. Ask them about eHealth Live Advice or get started on your own at ehealth.com. Either way, it's always a free service. See if you could get more for less with eHealth, like these folks did.
The savings are unbelievable.
I could see the costs side by side. eHealth is wonderful. $1,200 savings in my pocket. I was really pleasantly surprised with that.
Call 1-800-708-0234 to compare Medicare plans in your area or visit eHealth.com.
eHealth, your Medicare matchmaker.
I'm gonna unplug your CPAP. Smoke job.
It's mine. Back in, I'm Bob Brooks. Rob has the night off. The viral video of 6 Democrat lawmakers calling for a coup has caught the president's attention, as you would imagine, after alleging the White House is giving illegal orders and our current service members should refuse them. The president responded, "It's called seditious behavior at the highest level. Each one of these traitors to hold our country to our country should be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. We won't have a country anymore. An example must be set." Hard to disagree with the president there. Senator Mark Kelly, Congressman Jason Crow, both featured in the video. They doubled down on their stance.
For a country of laws, if anybody in the chain of command, anybody asks you to do something that's illegal, not only should you not do it, you're actually required not to do it.
We're reminding those young men and women that they have obligations not to any individual, not to any political party, but to the Constitution and to the rule of law. That is their obligation. This president has made a series of very, very disturbing comments that would indicate that he is threatening to use the military in an unlawful way.
Dr. Michael Savage, host of Savage Nation, joins us now. Doc, I saw your reactions in the screen right next to me.
Bob,
here.
come on.
I can't believe
Bob,
it.
Not only it's seditious, it's stupid. First of all, let's look at what happened before Trump was in power with regard to what happened within the military. The hypocrisy is overwhelming. Where was the disobey unlawful orders crowd, such as those we just heard, when Democrats did the following? When they locked down businesses, when they forced COVID shots on troops and fired the unvaxxed in the military, when the Democrats refused to secure the border and let 30 million invade the country. Where were they then? Where were they when they shielded illegals with sanctuary city policies? Where were they when they kept forgiving student debt after SCOTUS said no? Where were they when they wiretapped sitting members of Congress? Where were they when they spied on millions of Americans' social media? See, to me, to them, unlawful only matters when the left loses power, and they amplify it through dummies like we just saw sitting there on CNN or NBC, and they're undermining military cohesion, the chain of command. And by the way, Trump's 100% right. It is sedition. No question in my mind. There were no illegal orders. They openly and publicly committed treason, in my opinion, these Congress people, by seditiously calling for an insurrection against President Trump. And Trump laid out for them what our laws are on that and what the legal consequences for breaking those laws happen to be. So it's hypocrisy from the top to the bottom, and very dangerous at that.
It is. And it's just more this hysterical behavior, right? Look at what they did with impeachments against President Trump the first time, dumbing those down. It's like normal now, when they used to be for extreme circumstances here. Indictments, investigations, like you said, spying on members of Congress here. If it doesn't go their way, they seem to be willing to take things to the extreme, truly erode our democracy. And now they want military members to defy orders.
Well, they're encouraging sedition, which is shocking, by the way, especially when we have war maneuvers by China and so many situations around the world where we're going to have to need the military, God forbid, but we will eventually need it in such places as the China Sea or God knows where. What are you going to have the sailors, 20% of them say, I'm not following orders, I won't fire the missiles because I don't agree with this? This is crazy.
I mean, it is insurrection. They are inciting to basically to do an insurrection on their own, and who knows if it picks up steam or not.
Well, I don't think it will. I think people who are in the military are not going to risk their own careers or lives to do it. And some good examples will be set. Anyone who's going to, follow these orders from these crazy Democrat nutcases is going to wind up in the brig for 20 years. It's going to set a very bad precedent for anyone who wants to suddenly make a decision that they're the commander-in-chief rather than their boss, the lieutenant or the captain or the general, you know. So, look, this is crazy stuff going on now in America, and there's only one answer, and I came up with it years ago, Bob. When things don't make sense, when the Democrats do stuff like this, you just say, okay, here's the answer. Liberalism is a mental disorder. When you plug that into a question, it always answers the question. There's no logical answer for what they're doing other than mental disorder.
I've said it sitting in this chair, filling in for Rob before. Woke is a mental illness. And look at where it's led us to. There was a communist in the Oval Office today, mind you. Too.
Oh,
that's pretty insane.
Listen, I'm not happy. I understand what people are saying. I went online today and I said, do you approve of the communist meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office? I don't personally, because it legitimizes Mamdani, which I thought was a terrible thing to do. It's one thing to work with him behind the scenes, to try to work things out, to keep things going along in New York. It's another thing to celebrate the guy's success and say, hey, that's just great. Call me a fascist if you want. I don't know, man. I don't know who's advising President Trump. Right. I don't like it.
I think the president was doing his best to calm fears, though, for New Yorkers, too. Millions of people live here. You know, I know he's the president. He wants success for everybody. And, you know, hopefully people aren't as fearful now after that meeting. Doc, we got to leave it there. Yeah.
But Mamdani has celebrated radical Islam. This is not an ordinary Muslim guy who's a politician. This is a radical, extremist Muslim guy who is now the mayor of the biggest city in America. One step away from the presidency. By the way, that's what New York's mayors usually were. It's very dangerous to celebrate him the way the president did. My opinion, I'm not an advisor. I'm just a commentator.
Got to leave it there. Dr. Savage,
Thanks.
Always a pleasure, man. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well. You know, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have.
All right, Mamdani's highly anticipated visit to the White House kind of took an unexpected turn. We talked about it tonight as the two once big-time enemies appeared to be quite friendly, both looking towards a common goal, making New York City safe and affordable. The meeting itself came as a shock to people. Former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, all right, he weighed in on it earlier.
I think Trump has actually a lot of respect for Mamdani. As they say, game respects game. And I think Trump is using this meeting, bluntly, first and foremost, to distract from the Epstein files.
Dick Morris, advisor to President Trump, joins us on Friday night. Dick, your thoughts about the big meeting?
Well, I think that Trump is right for having acted. And I think that if there's going to be an offense in the relationship, if somebody's going to break it off, it's got to be Mamdani, not the president.
Right.
Trump should continue the posture of being sweet, reasonable, and open. And if the mayor wants to destroy his relationship and destroy New York's relationship with the federal government, let them do it, but we should not do it. I think it's very important that Trump cooled the tension after the election and basically says the move is up to Mamdani. He's in an impossible situation. He just promoted free bus rides, and we've just learned that in Los Angeles it's caused almost a total cessation of any revenue. And Mamdani sees that he can't govern without federal aid. So I think that's fine, but I think Trump, by being sweet and reasonable, Trump is putting the ball in Mamdani's court, and Mamdani will have to deal with that.
Yeah, I think he did, and I think he also let everyone know he's not going to let our biggest city go to hell here under a socialist or communist watch. Want to talk about the other big story with you tonight, Dick. We just had Dr. Savage on. Democrats urging the military, of course, to refuse illegal orders from President Trump. Where do you see this going? And really, what was the point? What was the point of this?
Well, the first thing is that I kept waiting to hear what orders they considered to be illegal. Are they talking about ICE? Are they talking about any of our policies in Ukraine or Sinai? I think that fundamentally the Democrats need to get their act together and say, what do they oppose? And the likely inference is that they're opposing the enforcement of immigration laws in the United States. And then when ICE is ordered to arrest people who've broken the law, some of them criminal as well, they're protesting Trump moving against them. And they're saying you should not. And I think that if the Democrats take that position, it'll kill them. Because public supports what ICE is doing.
I think what they did more than anything is, some of our service military men and women put this little bug into their head. Like, oh, I can actually refuse to do this here. And a slippery slope once something like that gets started, total anarchy, if you really think about it down the line.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, let's hope not.
But I do think that the Democrats are irresponsible for doing this. And the main thing is that Trump should pin them down. What's illegal? Obviously, the main engagement now is sending troops in to stop crime and arrest criminals and to back up ICE. And those are all things that are popular with the American people. Those are all things that are clearly legal for the president to do.
It's big time. And, ICE and, bombing, the drug boats coming in. Every family in our country is affected by drugs in one way, shape, or form. It's a huge issue.
Democrats are stupid for drawing a line at that. There's plenty they could draw the line at, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Dick, got to leave it there. Always a pleasure to have you on. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, Eric Swalwell, right, from California. He's entering the governor's race, vowing to be the state's fighter and protector. News from the left coming up.
It's about political
American
points.
people deserve better fiscal.
It's terrible. Politics seeps into everything.
What do you mean? Talk about climate change or the economy or, of course, elections.
You can't find out what we should really expect to happen.
But of course you can.
Go to IBKR's Forecast Trader.
Put your money where your mouth is.
You've put up with your old shower for too long. It's outdated, unsafe, and it's time to replace it. But why struggle with a lengthy shower remodel when Jacuzzi can do it in just one day? And there's no need to break a sweat or your budget.
For a limited time, get free fixtures and a free shower door, plus 0 interest and 0 payments for up to 1 year.
So you can finally convert your old bath to a safer, easy entry shower, complete with a custom seat, grab bars, and slip-resistant floor installed in 1 day.
My overall experience with Jacuzzi has been wonderful. Everything was customized to the way I wanted it for the price that I wanted to pay.
I've had a great experience from start to finish.
Don't take matters into your own hands. Do it the smart way. Give Jacuzzi Bath Remodel a call.
Call or go online now to jacuzzibathremodel.com. For the first time ever, we're offering free fixtures and a free shower door, plus 0 interest and 0 payments for up to 1 year.
Call 800-201-9527, 800-201-9527. Call now.
I'm sorry to bother you, but I have 30 seconds to give you a very important message. My name is Arthur Lee. I'm the CEO and inventor of LifeVac, a simple choking rescue device that could save a life in a choking emergency. We've saved over 3,000 lives now, but we're not there. 5,000 people a year choke to death, 1 child every 5 days. Please consider protecting your family in a choking emergency with LifeVac. Go to lifevac.net today. Thank you for your time.
Growing up, kids face a lot of stress. Girls on the Run turns that stress into strength. Through fun activities, girls build confidence and learn life skills like managing emotions and resolving conflict. Doing this work for 2 decades has shown me that youth mental health is complex. Every girl is unique, and there isn't one simple fix. Let's come together to empower girls, support parents, and strengthen families.
A peace plan for Gaza. For the plan to advance, Hamas must disarm. Instead,
tonight, terrifying images emerging from Gaza. Videos show Hamas-linked gunmen carrying out a public execution as they return to the streets.
Hamas on a rampage, executing Palestinians. Bloody crackdown, spreading terror. For freedom, not terror, Hamas must go.
I love California. It's the greatest country in the world. This great state needs a fighter and a protector, someone who will bring prices down, lift wages up. And we can say that we're the 4th largest economy in the world, and we are, and I love to brag about that. But what does that mean if you can't afford to live here? So I came here tonight, Jimmy, to tell you and your audience that I'm running to be the next governor of California.
I didn't know California was a country, thought it was a state. Time now for news from the left. That was California Congressman Eric Swalwell on Jimmy Kimmel throwing his hat into the crowded California governor's race to replace Gavin Newsom next year. Comes 8 days after getting hit with a federal criminal referral for alleged mortgage and tax fraud. Swalwell being investigated for purporting false statements surrounding the purchase of his $1.2 million house in Washington, D.C., claiming it as his primary residence, even though he is a congressman in California. Seems odd. The probe into potential fraud is the latest controversy involving him. Swalwell infamously was also booted off the House Intelligence Committee back in 2023 following reports that a suspected Chinese spy had infiltrated the congressman's campaign and then got close to him personally, like really close. Swalwell, a longtime nemesis and critic of President Trump, telling the San Francisco Chronicle one of his missions as governor, quote, keep Trump out of our homes, streets, and lives. All right. Tim Grimm, executive editor at Newsbusters. Bill D'Agostino, MRC senior research analyst, joins us now. Tim, Eric Swalwell, he going to be the next governor of California?
It sounds like it's either going to be Swalwell or Katie Porter.
Oh, God.
I think I'd rather have hot potatoes poured on my skull than deal with either of those.
Like Katie Porter's ex-husband.
Yeah. But notice that he does this on the Jimmy Kimmel show. It just shows you how Kimmel and Colbert are these DNC hangouts where all the politicians come. And of course, when he announces he's running for governor, the audience squeals like a bunch of little girls. And it just shows you these shows are really the property of the Democrats. That's what I took away from it.
Oh, I've talked about that till I'm blue in the face, Bill. Jimmy Kimmel, he's a mouthpiece for the left. You know, don't say you're a late-night stand-up comedian. That's not what you are. You are a mouthpiece for the left. But anyways, your thoughts on Eric Swalwell here?
Yeah, I think Tim's probably right. I would also throw Tom Steyer into the mix there too. But it's two completely ineffectual Democratic members of Congress, and then basically a who's who of failed cabinet members, right? So whatever California ends up with, it's not going to be great. Although it's not great now either with Newsom. His describing California as a country, I think that was him just being clever, which is actually dumber than if it was just a slip of the tongue. Because, okay, if California is its own country, can we stop letting them immigrate to the rest of the United States and charge them tariffs and whatnot? That would be fantastic.
Well,
I would love to do that.
Has gotten so high there. Part of the big reason houses cost so much is Californians with any means moved to other states and jacked up the price of a home all over the place. Also want to hit on this. CNN, so they went on to interview a transgender woman with HIV working at a USAID-funded transgender clinic in South Africa, which is now shut down, thank God, after President Trump closed the aid that was going there. Here, take a look at this, guys.
Our trans community, they come from different parts of the world.
As soon as Trump was inaugurated, basically, as soon as he came back into office.
Within a week, he just decided that he wants nothing to do, more especially with LGBTQI+ people, and more especially, he said transgender community.
Wow, Tim, am I glad President Trump is back in office. We're funding that. That's good, right?
Yeah, this is peak Donny O'Sullivan. You know, this is the guy on CNN who's usually there trying to say, we went looking for the crazy extremists, the MAGA extremists. But when they're LGBT extremists, he's like, oh, please tell us how Trump is bad for you. Show us on the diagram where he hurt you. You're exactly right. People, we don't need to be funding trans clinics doing mutilations or whatever in foreign countries. That's exactly what was wrong with USAID.
I love how CNN goes there then to try and make it like, oh, we should feel bad. And can you believe this? We cut this funding for this trans clinic in South Africa. My God. All right, got to leave it there. Tim, Bill, good to see you both.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break. Come right back.
Big media will never stop their antics, their bias, their ugly insinuations, their nasty attacks. Well, they may never stop, but I will never stop exposing them.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
Hi, I'm Bob Webster. You know, in cold weather, I'll bet you every farmer, rancher, and homeowner in the country worries about their pipes freezing and breaking. Well, the Freeze Miser ends that worry. No batteries, no wires, just some amazing technology that lets it sense when the temperature of the water in the pipes drops to 37 degrees. Then it starts releasing exactly the right amount of water. Check it out at freezemiser.com or at your favorite nursery, garden center, hardware, or farm and ranch store. It's the Freeze Miser, and it works.
The poverty is unimaginable. There are people who are struggling.
This is where she washes the dishes.
If you're ever going to allow your Christian faith to rise and to do something for God's chosen people, now is the time.
This is the home of Galena. She's 96 years old.
This is what she had to eat for today.
She has one pot with water and wheat.
My father was killed by the Nazis, and I was an orphan. I didn't know about God. But now, in the cold, hungry nights, I pray for food to the God I've never known. There are good people that love you.
You see the tears. Scripture says joy can come in the morning, and you can be the reason.
Right now in Ukraine, elderly Jews are trapped in unbearable poverty. If you will bless these hurting children of Israel, you will receive God's blessing in return. Your urgent gift today of $25 will help rush a survival food box filled with life-saving essentials. Call, scan, or go online now.
I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I don't know how much longer she could have waited for us to come.
I can't even grow my food anymore. What will happen to me? I'm doomed to starve.
Tens of thousands of elderly Holocaust survivors in the former Soviet Union are living in extreme poverty, hungry, and forgotten. But through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, we can bring them hope.
Eggs. It's my favorite food. May you be blessed.
You say to them, we see you and we're here to help.
Please don't delay. Call, scan, or go online now.
Finally tonight, make sure to catch me on my show, American Agenda, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday with my co-host, Katrina Zish, right here on Newsmax. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend. You earned it. We'll see you next week. Rob Finnerty is next.